And today we have Desma Murphy, who is a production designer and also an art director. And I'm going to have her take it away. And thank you for coming.
Hello, everybody. So nice to have you all and give you an opportunity to hear a little bit about the film industry. I guess I'll just start in terms of how I got in the industry, and then I'm going to share a little presentation about just developing a set for a large feature. So when I was in high school, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, and that was my mission. And I had an awesome art teacher who was like, you don't really want to be a veterinarian, you want to go into the arts. And I always loved the arts. So she actually introduced me to theater, and I designed a play for the school and thought, oh, that's really interesting. But I actually, from there, fell in love with film and film design. So, and that was my junior year in high school. And so I, from there, went, and just so much filming happens in LA. I just sort of, whenever I saw anything filming or anything like that, I would tell my parents, hey, stop. I want to go find the art director or somebody on set. And so they were all really excited and supportive, but they were all architects. So they're like, you need to go to architecture school. And so this was back in the late 80s that this was happening. So it's a little different now, but they're like, study architecture, and that's a great, gateway to getting into where you want to go. So I was like, okay. So I went and studied architecture. I did an interesting program where I went to two schools. They were doing sort of a pilot program. And I went to Otis Parsons for architecture, and which is now just Otis School of Design. And then I went to Whittier College for all my liberal arts. So getting my math, science, philosophy, English, and languages. And so it was a really great balance, because a lot of times when you just go to an art school, you don't get all the philosophy and art history and all of and math and science. So it was a really good foundation. So from there, I applied to the Television Academy, and it's open for any student that's finished 4 years of college, and you can then apply to a discipline. So it's art direction, sound editing, hair and makeup. And so I applied for art direction and was lucky enough to get an internship there and learn the ways of television. And so I worked on the last season of Cheers and Bold and the Beautiful soap opera, which I knew nothing about. So, but both were just it was really interesting. But from there, I got the basics, and I had great mentors there who taught me how to go from architectural drafting into theatrical and film drafting. You don't need quite as much information, but it's all the same language and design process. And so from there, my mentor was like, you should really go to grad school. And I was just like, I just finished 5 years of architecture school, and I really didn't want to go and do any more school. So I took 2 years off and tried to get in the industry. And it's challenging if you don't know anybody. So it's a lot of knocking on doors and persevering and getting a lot of no's. So then after 2 years, I said, well, maybe I should go to grad school. Maybe I'd make connections in film. So I ended up going to NYU that did theater and film. And there's really sort of, I did a lot of theater while I was there, because I was able to design, work with the process of having dialogues with directors and other creative people to come up with a common vision, which is a super great tool that I use every day. And so I love that aspect of theater. And also it's just live, you're there with an audience, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great venue. And then I did film on the side. And then I didn't produce any films while I was in school, but we did a lot of theoretical projects. And then it was there that I made connections to people here in LA for film. So after that, I then came back to LA, and there's always this catch-22. It's you want to get in the industry, but you have to be in the union. And so there's no direct path to getting in the union. So you just sort of take whatever job you can, whether it's union, non-union. A lot of non-union shows will become union, and that's one way to get in the union. Or you find someone who will rally for you and help you get in the union, which is what happened to me. I was working on a Nickelodeon show as a PA, and the producer petitioned to get me in the union. So that was my process. It was kind of, in the back door, but you need someone to like take you under their wing and give you that little boost to get in there. And the industry is it's very social. It's very, you just want to meet anybody you can meet, and you kind of need to be a squeaky wheel, but you don't need to, there's that fine line of being a squeaky wheel and being annoying. So you sort of balance it, but it's like a lot of people, they work, like for me, it's like, I have students talk to me after they've graduated, and it's like, I'm like, just keep sending me emails. Cause it's like, you get so busy that you forget, and it's not a priority in your mind. But when you're staffing up and you need a PA, which is a great entry position, to get familiarized with the art department. And, it's like you could hit the right moment and go, yeah, come on in, be my PA, and we'll teach you the ways of the art department. So,
Desiree, can I ask you can you explain what a PA is and what they do?
Oh yeah, a PA is a production assistant, and we usually have one art PA on a film, and they sort of do a lot of running around. So they'll get lunches, they'll make copies, they'll deliver prints to construction. They will, I often will have them help me make models, especially if it's a PA who really wants to be in the industry. And sometimes we'll have production or producers have us hire PAs that really, they just want a job, but they don't really have any interest in the art department. But oftentimes I try to hire someone that does, because then you can start making models, or like if I have to build a table, I'll say, here, why don't we, have you try building a table and drawing it out, scaling it, do some research. So you start building a portfolio, and you get a sense of like what it is that, the skills that you need to be in the art department. So skill-wise, coming into the art department, drafting is huge. Whether it's like SketchUp, Vectorworks, there's a bunch of different programs, but as an art director, SketchUp is a really good tool because you can make 3D spaces and then also do plans and working drawings from it. And then you can give that to a set designer. So I guess I should say really quick too, who is in the art department? Do you guys know this structure? No? Okay, so in an art department, you have a production designer who designs the look of the film, and then works with the director and the director of photography to get the overall look of the film. Then under the production designer, you have a supervising art director who takes those ideas from the production designer and will lay them out in plan a lot of time and sort of flesh it out, because that person usually doesn't have time to do all of that. They'll give you a bunch of research, and we call it like a napkin sketch, where they'll just give you a little doodle, and then you need to like go figure it out. And then you can give it to, and then that person's also responsible for budgeting the film. And then this is the supervising art director, and then hiring the art department and working with construction and producers to get the budget in line and get everything built. And that's the position I usually play, is the supervising art director. Then you have art directors underneath that who will run sets that are built on stage or sets that are built on location. And they're in charge of making sure that those all happen. And then I oversee all those people. Then the art directors will oversee the drafting of those sets. So if we're building it from scratch, they'll make sure that construction gets all the drawings they need. If we're doing a location, they'll make sure that we have plans of those locations and anything we might be adding to that location. And then after we have set designers who do all the drawing, we have graphic designers who design all of the graphics that go on buildings. So if you need signage on a building, street signs, menus, paperwork for people to sign, or just stuff dressed into a set. Like it could be magazine covers, it could be, there's all sorts of things. Anything that has any text or anything, you have to create it because it's cleared. It doesn't, we own it at that point. So all of it has to be original. Artwork, sometimes they'll create that's hanging on walls. And then we have model makers who take the drafting that the set designers do and make a lovely little model, which you often do in theater. You make a little model of your set so you can show the director. Yeah, and that's sort of that. Oh, and now we have we have VR work. So we'll have people who come in and they'll create 3D spaces for our director. We did it a lot on Aquaman, and then you just put your VR, your glasses on, and then they can walk through the space. So that's becoming very popular in art departments now. What else? Oh, and illustrators. We have beautiful illustrators who work in Photoshop, Illustrator, ZBrush, and they create, the look of what it is that we're building. So they'll put all the textiles in, they'll put the furniture, people, lighting, mood, and all of that. So it really is, it's a great tool for the production designer to sell the look of a set. And what else? I think that's it. That's kind of our art department. Oh, we have an art department coordinator who sort of becomes like my right hand, because she'll work on scheduling meetings and making sure drawings go out on time, and she just sort of keeps everything running. And that's kind of that. I think I got it all in there. That's kind of a good overview. And then I can show should I show the little Aquaman presentation? Because it demonstrates drafting and model making.
Right, and I just want to say, if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat anytime. Okay.
And then you can just stop me. So I'm going to share my screen. It's a messy screen, so apologize. Okay. So when we did Aquaman, we started prep of Aquaman in Los Angeles, and we did about 4 months here, and then we went and spent 10 months in Australia, and we made the whole movie in Australia. And the whole film, we built everything, and then we augmented it in post with adding everything in digitally. So this particular set was a set that I was responsible for and designed, and we were going to shoot this originally in Italy. And then the production decided that it was too expensive to go to Italy, so we were going to build it out in the fields behind our studio, which we had to move the animals out, clear everything, and then it was a big grassy area with a concrete pad that they had built for something they were building on Thor. And so then I just expanded from that. So it was a great place to build Italy. But what we do to start is we come up with a bunch of research. And so this was taking place in Sicily, and in a little town called Vicenza, which is the town you see here. And research is it's huge, because you really, when you're creating a world, you want to get all the textures and age, and you just want to feel the history of a space. And oftentimes when you're building a set, it looks new, or you think and you see it in movies, sometimes you can see it, is like, it just doesn't look real. It doesn't look like you're actually on location. So the goal is to make you think that you never built it at all and that you actually went to the location. So we do a bunch of research, and the production designer had already scouted this with the director, and there were things that the director really loved. So this was like a restaurant that he fell in love with. And so when I went there, I photographed it, took a couple of measurements, and then just noted like the great ground textures that are there, which are very specific to this little town. And, and then the things that you have, the old with the new. So you have all of the electrical that's added, and all those little subtleties add to the dimension of a set. So, and then these are just more elements that, you know, I pulled from to create this, the built set.
Desiree, can I ask you a question so are you the one on location taking these pictures, or do you have people in Italy taking those pictures and then using them when you're in Australia?
No, I actually, it was funny. I went to Sicily for one day, and so I took all these photos, but I was told I was going to go back, you know, in a few weeks, and I would get like a week there where I could actually measure and scale things, because the proportions things are different than our proportions today. So I did really sort of the bare minimum, other than, like, you know, I managed to put a tape measure down on the floor tiles, and then I took a ton of photography. So this was sort of my starting point, and then I was supposed to go back, and unfortunately I didn't get to go back. So then it's like, it was a lot of guessing on scale and size of things, but it worked out all right. But it takes more time. But so this was just a day of scouting.
And this village looks really old. It looks like a 14th or 15th century or something.
Yeah, I don't know the specific date of it, but you're definitely in the right ballpark. And it's a great little town. It's only open in the summer. They totally shut down in the winter. And I was there in the wintertime, and so none of the shops were open, which was unfortunate, because I would have loved to have seen that texture of the shops. But the architecture was stunning, and they had beautiful views. It was built up on a hillside, and it was gorgeous.
Thank you.
There were two or three shops that were open. So we had a plate shop, and then kind of like a little furniture kind of tchotchke shop, and then a little food store. But not many people. And then this was research because we had a big rooftop chase sequence. So I wanted to be sure to get up on the roofs and get a sense of their texture and what they looked like. Then the next phase that I went through is, like, you always want to make sure you're on the same page with the director and the script. So I just took this. This was a hillside in Italy, not specifically the one I scouted, but represented the action in the film. So the idea was that, you know, they come into the town, they embrace it. Oh, this is charming. This is lovely. And then they go up to a temple, and then there's an action sequence and a chase, and then, you know, you end up in the water. So it's important to block out the action, and that's basically what this frame is sharing with you. Is, you know, here are the beats that we're going to design for. And then this is an example of an illustration that one of our illustrators did, showing the water and then the little town that we're going to design, which is in the circle, and then the castle remains above. And then this is another illustration. This was a very young illustrator who was very new, but very determined. And this guy was awesome. And it sort of shows the tenacity of when you really want a job, because he grew up, he's in Australia. He grew up he was on a bell pepper farm. And so he picked bell peppers, and he really wanted to be an illustrator. So he decided he would do that part-time. And then wherever he heard that a movie was shooting, he would actually go there and try and get himself on a film. And so that's what he did with Aquaman. So his passion got him the job. This illustration's a little cut and paste. Usually it's, you know, it looks more lifelike is kind of what we go through. So this is more of a gesture of what our piazza was looking like. But it shows, like, you know, you recognize the restaurant from that picture on the right. And then it just sort of shows that we overlook the water from this piazza. Then this was my model. So when I design a set, I design and model, because it allows you to kind of push and pull the space and kind of see, like, what you see from one layer to the next layer. And I find like when you build things and there's many layers that you can look through, it gives that element of reality to it versus it just being like a U-shaped space and you don't really see much off to the sides. So I really enjoy creating all that depth because then you can put actors there, you can like have things drive in and out. It gives you a sense of like a working little town. So this was a rough study model that I did based on some little thumbnail sketches. And this transpired like over a weekend. It was a long weekend, but it was one of those moments where, you know, you needed to crank it out and then present it to the director on a Monday. So he looked at this and he loved it. It worked for the action. And so we then go from this to working drawings. So this is showing where you can enter. There's little arrows at the bottom. Can you see my cursor? So down here, they entered, and then this, the sandwich shop, the wine shop, and the gelato shop are shops that are dressed inside that they could actually feature. And then everything else is just a storefront. So you couldn't go inside. And then it's showing the action that was very early on. It changed from this, but this was the starting point that we all started on. Then this is an example of hand drafting. So hand drafting isn't as popular today, but it works really well for showing things that are like falling apart, aged, rocks. You know, it gives it a lot of character that informs the plasters, how the textures of those walls need to look. And that's sometimes hard to achieve in digital drawings, but people are sort of combining their digital drafting with Photoshop and layering those character elements in when needed. And just another example of plates of drawings. And so this is an example. This is a page that I put together to communicate. Like up here, we have a bunch of doors and windows, and there's so many, we had so many facades that you want to show, well, it's this kind of door with this kind of color and this sort of texture. So that's what this is referencing. So this is bringing in a reference for what this space will look like. Here's our restaurant that we're duplicating. And so the energy there. So you just always want to show like research examples of what you're looking for are really important to give to your plasters and your painters to get that look that you're going for. And you know, all this great age and texture, it's just like they can create all of that. They just need to know. And then this is just, it's a beautiful pencil sketch. That's a combo pencil sketch, and then it's put into Photoshop and all this great, you know, age and textures put onto it. And then this was an elevation. I saw this great painting that I was just like, oh, the walls need to look like this. So the graphic designer took this and overlaid and abstracted the image a bit so it didn't look like the artist's work, but had the essence of the artist's work. So I didn't have to get clearance on it. And then we did these, you know, lovely painted walls inside, which we never saw. Sad. There's a lot of work you do that you never see in movies. So this is the backlot that we built the village on. And that's the pad that was used for Thor when they shot there. And then, you know, we're out here with the DP and the producers, and they're trying to figure out how to situate the set on the piece of land based on the sun, so that the sun will do half their lighting for them, because we did a lot of day shooting. So they wanted to do a lot of just, you know, practical light. So we spent a lot of time out there trying to figure out how it wants to sit. And then once we figure that out, then, you know, then we start building. So this is, you know, one part of the process of, you know, building it. You can see it in different phases. And yeah, and if you have any questions, let me know. But we spent 3 months building this set.
Does I have a question with CGI? How much
I'm sorry, say that again?
with CGI or the stuff that goes in after, do they determine at the very beginning what's going to be real and what's not real or virtual or?
Yes. So this one, we opted for like 90% of what you see when this is shot is real. It's only when you get into the wider views for the rooftop chases and the sequences that you'll see the layer behind it that we comped in. And this particular set, our visual effects department who does all of that work, oftentimes will have us do blue, which you see here, and we'd run blue along all these edges. But they decided they didn't need to do that because most of this background is green. So it gave them a natural way to cut around the architecture when they were shooting it. And if there was something that was more complicated, they would just have a big flat like this that they put on a lift that they could fly into a background when needed. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes.
Okay. Then there's oftentimes you want to check scale. So I drew up this little fountain and blew it up to full scale so that the production designer wanted to make sure that it wasn't too big or too small. So this was we took the paper, cut out, put it on a piece of wood, then they construction cut it out for me and put it on jacks, which you can see here to hold it up. And then everybody was able to see it and approve it. Because to start this, there's many crafts that will get involved in this fountain to make it happen, which I'll show you in a second. So you want to make sure that your scale and your size and everything is approved by everyone. And this is the fountain drawing. So this basically shows all the details. And then this is a section through the middle of our fountain to illustrate how we're going to get water into the various parts that will do these, lovely little sprays of water. And then this is just a close-up view of that. Then we have like these amazing sculptors. There's so many different talents that come into play. So here we have this lovely sculptor who did an amazing job. I found her some research on, this kind of seahorse, and then a frog that I actually photographed on a fountain in Italy. So she then sculpted the little guy, and here it is here. And then they do a clay sculpt, and then they cast it to create multiple versions of it. So this is all done in fiberglass. And then they just glue them to the center piece that you can see here. So here they're making the mold. And then here's more, the frogs are also in fiberglass. And then this is the little frog as a finished product. And then we have people who work in foam. And so this gentleman is a beautiful foam sculptor, and he sculpted one fish, and then you cast it and you create a mold, which is what you see here. And then again, it's fiberglass. And then this is our fiberglass form. This was the piece of research that I was working off of. And then this is the finished product. And then this is the set all dressed and finished.
Does that water, so the water doesn't affect the foam at all?
It does not, because the foam is only in the sculpting process, and then we make a mold, and then it's fiberglass. So then the fiberglass is water resistant, and then we can paint it and age it.
And just curious, what happens to all these pieces when the filming is done? Does it just get demolished, or do they save stuff, or what?
It goes in the dumpster. It's really sad. The fountain was saved and is at the amusement park next door. And I think they saved the church that's in the set, and it's in the amusement park next door, but otherwise everything else just went in the dumpster. It's sad.
That's horrible.
It's a lot of beautiful work that doesn't get saved.
And so all the buildings that are constructed, are they, because you said some are facades and some are actually, you have a room inside and all that,
Mhm.
but they're full walls and everything, and then that just gets torn down?
It does. We use real materials, so everything's wood framed because they need to be structural so that they're safe for everybody. So they're basically, if you were going to build a house in wood framing, it's the same process. You just aren't putting real electrical and insulation in the walls. So it's all the building process is the same. And then you put real plaster on the outside and age it. The only thing that would not be real. I'll show you another picture. The stone is actually a foam that we carve and then apply to the surface of, like a flat wall like this, and then we hard coat it with a plaster surface to protect the foam, and then we age it. So that's the only material that would, be more of a film type material.
Okay. Thanks.
And yeah, and then here we design all the signage too. So we have some fun. So this was done by one of our set designers, and I had given them some research on some fun signs that we saw. And this requires, these are plastic, these are backlit. We had a night scene at one point, so this would light from inside. Then we have amazing welders and sculptors who sculpted these in metal, which was fantastic. And then these are just views of, the finished set. And then this is just showing the process of this foam. So we have a standard wood wall, and then we, show them research of what kind of stone we're looking for. And then they create 4 different variances of a sheet this would be considered a sheet. And we have 4 different types of rock patterns that we then cut in around each other. And then we hide all the seams so it feels organic. And then it ends up looking like this wall over here. And so this is just more views. And this is like one of those things where I was talking about like the depth. So we have this space, then you go up here and you have this space, and then you have this back space. And this is a scene where we have somebody jumping from this window and crashing through this window. It's a high shot, so it gives you really nice depth and texture back here that's real and doesn't have to be put in digitally. And then this is where our actors drive in at the beginning of the scene. And so that's like the wide view. This is their establishing view that we shot on the day. And then they take this whole image here and then they comp it into the hillside of the illustration that I showed you. So they'll put it into a hillside in Italy. This was a comic book sketch that we did with 4 German comic book illustrators. And so they created this image for us for the fight sequence in the Italy set. And then this is an example of how we create the 3D environment that goes on top of what I've built. So this is the set that we built. And then this is taking the research that I had, and then they build 3D models of it and blend the 2 worlds together. This image here is, we have a huge action sequence. So I was trying to gather information from the director on how he saw the action coming into the piazza. So, and the direction of how things happen. This particular set was at another location, but I wanted to make sure that they blended in terms of like, if he's hitting a bell tower, does he land at the church? Does he land in another building? So you want to just you want to coordinate all the parts and pieces so the storytelling is working. This is an example of, this is with our stunt department. And so a lot of times what you'll have is when an actor is thrown up against a wall, which there's a big scene where he gets thrown up against a wall here. we cover the wall in foam so that it's really soft and they don't hurt themselves when they hit the wall. And then we do a paint treatment on top of that to make it look like a plastered wall. So there's a lot of planning that goes involved when we go to create these sets, to coordinate it with stunts, if they hit the wall or if they have to crash through the wall. All those things have to be planned ahead of time before we start construction.
Desmond, there was a question. Are the 3D models built with SketchUp? I think you said that before, or other software.
Oh, it's other software. Some of it's in Rhino. I'm not sure. I'd have to see what Visual Effects is using right now, but sometimes it's Rhino, sometimes it's ZBrush, sometimes it's there's another one. Can't think of what it is, but there's so many different platforms for drawing and doing 3D work. So it just sort of depends on where it's headed after you use it. So most of our 3D work is done in AutoCAD or Rhino.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. This is the, another part of the set where we have someone crashing out this window. They hit the tile, they come through here, they hit the water tower, and then they slide up and they hit the bell. So here is kind of fun because, people, there's so much to these movies. And so they're just like, yeah, they fall out a window and they hit the bell tower, but they don't tell you what happens in between. So then it kind of gives me some time to have some fun where, it's like, you want to think of things that have good interaction and will show up on screen. So I was like, well, and a lot of Italian rooftops will have water containers. So I suggested, let's do some water because they could hit that, the water explodes. Then you hit the tile and the tiles, breaks apart and then the bell tower eventually explodes. So, it's fun in the art department because you get these things early, so you have an opportunity to sort of shape and form action moments and how things evolve. So it's fun. They don't tell you that in school. And then this is just showing, this is the Compton background. So this is a frame from the finished product. So this they put in, but this was all real. And then this explosion is all real. So all of this and the explosion is good. And then everything else was put in later. They comped him in later, just as they don't do those simultaneously. So what they'll do is they'll do the explosion first, and then they'll throw a stunt person later, and then they marry the two together. And then this is an example of what I was talking about earlier of like, what is this chase sequence? So this was something I pitched to the director saying, well, we could have these people do this. And so the idea was that we had, wrong way. So the idea here is that you have some of the soldiers chasing our lead actress, Mara, over the rooftop. And then we have one guy who ends up crashing through a wall and does an interior run. And then they all end up in the wine shop at the end. So this is just finding ways of describing action that communicates to people. So these things they don't really teach you in school. It's just sort of things you kind of figure out along the way and how you can best present your concept to people. And then this was a plan that I designed showing what that interior run would be like. So they would be running through all different apartments. And so the idea is that none of it is convenient, because once it looks convenient, it looks like you're not in a real space. It's like, oh, they just built that for stunts. So you really try to make it feel like you're busting through a wall, or you go through someone's shower, or you've gone through the cabinet in the kitchen, so that it makes it a little messy and a little complicated. So that's what this presentation was for. This was the bigger budget version. I was told I was spending too much money on this, so we ended up doing this, but we did a smaller version. And then this is This is showing the process of chasing on rooftops when you're not actually on the location. So what we did is we built 5 different kinds of rooftops with different dressing and parts and pieces. These we could also elevate to different heights. And then we were able to create, you know, this run over all these rooftops. So that they're always on the right surface and the right texture that they're interacting with. And then we could put them into the environment. And then this is an example where we crane in the blue screen behind a set. With her and her hair running, we needed a clean frame behind her. So the sky and the trees weren't going to work when you have hair involved. So all of our stunt actors are, these are all stunt people. They're all on wires for safety. And then they do all of this running practically. And so they run here, and then they crash through this roof. And so that's a scene from the film. But all these surfaces, these buildings are all real. So it's just a little bit that they had to put in the background. And then here's the guy I was telling you about earlier who comes through this window and crashes through this wall. And all these crash throughs are practical. And so they're all designed with plaster that's soft and breaks away, so everything's safe for everybody as they do their stunts. This, he practically shot through the roof, which is over here somewhere. And you get all that.
Desma, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when they're doing these practical stunts, is it like one shot and they just have to get it right, or do you guys do it more than one?
We do multiple takes. So this particular stunt we did 3 times, but they can only do it once a day because we have to then take out the damaged wall, put in a new wall, fill it in, and then repaint it. So when it's a stunt that's that significant, it's usually we have to do it over multiple days. So this one we did 3 times. When they crashed through the ceiling into the wine shop, they actually only did it once. The first take was great, and they're like, done. So sometimes you can do it in one, but sometimes this one had so many multiple things because you had this guy going, you had her going, there was a lot of parts to coordinate in this one. So oftentimes you'll have to do 2 or 3 takes for that. And then this is our wine shop. So this section is where we crashed through. And what we did here is we had to do these tiles, we had to make in soft plaster, and then we did balsa wood framing in here so that they could just crash through. And then we had this wine barrel down here that was made out of balsa wood that could help break their fall when they came in. And we created a stunt pad that sat here that we painted to look like the tile floor. So then they ended up on something soft. And that's the end of it. That's my last frame. So that's sort of it. That's just one set. That's like one segment in a movie. So you can imagine, all the parts and pieces that, that go along with, how do I get out of that? Yeah, that go along with making a movie. So, and all the different crafts that are involved. But it's a great industry. It's really a lot of fun. There's so many talented people, and you can come in with so many skills. It's like if you want to draw, if you want to model make, if you want to illustrate, there's just a ton of different avenues. And also just the VR work that's coming into play allows, for a whole nother element of technical skills that are, very prevalent today in the video gaming world and all of that we're using in the film world. So there's a lot of crossover, and it's a lot of fun. So,
well, you gotta love what you do, and it sounds like you do.
Oh, I do love it. It's always fun because you're always working with a new team of people, and I've been really lucky to travel, so I've gotten to work with so many different cultures. I worked in Thailand, and the way Thai people build scenery is very different than the way we do it. Australia was very different as well, and so it's great to just learn the different techniques and process. And you know, the way they make their stone for facades is very different in Australia. That's so much faster and so much better than what we do here. And so we brought that knowledge here, and we're converting. We're trying to change the way and use their process. But you know, it's fun. So you just meet new talent, and every film has its own challenges. It's like I learn something new on every show. Technology changes, so you're never at a comfort spot where you're like, I know everything, because it's just everything changes so quickly, and technology changes, and you know, people try to push the elements, and you know, how can we do it different? So that aspect of it's really fun, because everybody's always creative and collaborative, and yeah, it's just a world of possibilities. It's a great industry.
So tell me a little bit about like what we talked about this before. Typical day, your hours would be, how are you expected on location every day on site?
Yeah, the hours, you know, people like go, wow, the film industry is really glamorous. Not so much. There's really no glamour in the film industry. It's a lot of, there's small moments of glamour, but for the most part, it's a lot of hard work, and you're on a show for such a short period of time. It's just and they shorten your prep. So it's a pressure cooker. And so you really want to gather a group of people that you can collaborate with under pressure, and hopefully not many people, you know, crack and all that. But you know, my day usually starts at 6 a.m, and I usually get home about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And, you know, my day ends up being a little longer just because I'm overseeing everybody, and it takes me that long to like go through drawings and approve things and all of that. But it's usually a 12-hour day. It's, you know, it could be more, but it's usually a 12-hour day. The thing I find, you know, most challenging that I always tell people when they're starting is that your work-life balance is really important. And when you're starting out, you just say yes to everything, and you work long hours, and you need to do that to a certain extent, but you also need to remember that, you know, life and sleep and, you know, all of those things are equally as important. So that sometimes is forgotten about. So I always encourage people to remember that life-work balance. But
Right.
they're long days. There's a lot of pressure, but it's really good.
And what would you say to a student who is thinking about pursuing this as a career? Like, what is their first step out of high school? Do they major in a certain major like architecture? It sounds like architecture was a good major for you.
Architecture was a great, theater is great. I mean, it's like my roots are in theater. So it's like if you, I would recommend learning to build, learning to paint, learning to weld. I mean, any practical construction experience, if you want to get into the, you know, the set designing world of it and production designing, it's good to know all those skills, because when you're talking to construction, it's a helpful dialogue if you know what you're talking about. So, and they also respect you because you know how something may be framed, or, you know, if you want to weld something, why you want to weld it. So it's like as much practical experience you can get, I highly recommend. Also just like, you know, sculpture and fine art painting. It's just a way of like, you know, working with color, expressing yourself, conveying ideas. All of those tools are really great. Architecture I love, because really what I do every day is design architecture. So it's just sort of a natural progression for me. It's like, you know, I came out of school, I knew how to build models, I knew how to draft. You can do that in theater as well. I would just emphasize like whatever program you go into, because I meet a lot of kids graduating from film school today that don't know how to draft or ever had a drafting class, which I find shocking to me, because it's like, those are the key things you need to do your job. You need to be able to go to a location and measure a space and draw a little plan, or you have to be able to communicate your ideas. So, yeah, I would just recommend any, you know, theater you can get into, any building, drawing, painting you can get into. You could also just like, you know, seeing if you can do, you know, when I'm in town working, I always encourage, you know, if, you know, kids to, you know, if there's time and I can have people on set just to see what a stage looks like, how scenery is built, what is the environment like, you know, if those opportunities, you know, avail themselves, those are always great. Any internships you can do with television and film is great. Yeah, it's just, yeah, any practical experience. Get your hands dirty, get in there.
I was thinking, could you start out as a PA and then what is your next step from, I know it's who you know, but can you become a set designer from a PA, or is there like a trajectory that goes from there?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, this industry is, there's no A to B to C to D.
Okay.
It's kind of a free for all. That's the discouraging part about this industry, is you can be like the most amazing, talented person, and it's hard to get your foot in the door. So like from a PA, like for example, I was a PA at Nickelodeon, and I turned this job down 4 times because I was tired of being a PA. I was like, I'm going to be an art director now. And it wasn't happening. And that job actually that was the producer that ended up petitioning to get me in the union. So I was a PA. I was doing somebody else's job. I was doing the work of an art director, because he was doing music videos and not doing the job that needed to be done on the TV show. So I was doing his job while he was doing something else. And the producer noticed and said, well, that's not right. Let's fire that person and we'll get you in the union. So you never know. And that PA job, this is a funny story. So the production designer on that was the wife of a production designer who does film. And so I had actually sent my resume to him. He wasn't interested in hiring people at the time. So he threw my resume in the trash can. His wife pulled my resume out of the trash can and called me.
Wow.
So the process is just, you never know. So it's just, I think, just knocking on doors, meeting as many people as you can, get as much experience as you can, get the drawing skills, model making skills, and presentation skills are key as well. So if you're in theater, a lot of times if you're doing a set design, you'll present, you know, a model or your concept for that show. You know, those skills are great. I use those every day. So yeah, so it's all about communicating, being a good people person. It's a very people-oriented industry. So don't be shy. I'm inherently shy. I hate going up and introducing myself to new people, but I just force myself to do it. And, you know, it works out okay. They'll talk to you. You know, they won't say don't have time for you. So you just kind of got to go for it. I wish I had an A to B to C to D.
It seems like that's what the entertainment industry is. Yeah, it's just, you're right. There's not one straight shot to a job. About salary, so let me ask you, is there like a range? I know it seems it would be a huge range for different positions.
Mm-hmm.
Starting out, if you get, I don't know, when you start off, is there kind of a salary range, and then moving forward into production design or art direction, what the salaries are?
Oh, I'd have to look up what the scales are. They vary. I mean, when you're in the union, is your salaries are the best. If you're doing non-union, they have a tendency to do really low rates, and you're not making as good a money. I have no idea what those rates are. When you're on a union film project, there's different rates for television and film. There's also different rates for miniseries. So they're all broken down. And so I don't really have any experience in television miniseries world, but on feature films, you know, the production designers can range anywhere from, you know, $5,000 to $15,000. So it's all what you negotiate, and production designers will have an agent that in theory, you know, will, you know, negotiate your rate for you, which I'm
Is that $5,000 to $15,000 per feature? For a week? For a week. Okay.
Yeah. So everything's per week. So the production designer they negotiate their rates. So depending on the kind of films they're making, like your Aquaman's that person's gonna have a fairly good rate versus, you know, someone who's making, I'm trying to think of a movie. I haven't been to a movie in so long. Like your hangover movie, kind of, more of like your comedy, mainstream, slice of life type film, will be a smaller budget film. So your art directors, like your supervising art directors, there's scale. So there isn't really a certain rate for a supervising art director. So all your art directors are the same rate, unless you can negotiate something over scale. And those are $3,500 to $4,000 a week. And then set designers are due per hour, and set designers have different hierarchy. So you have like your junior set designer, senior set designer, set designer specialist. So they all come in with different skills. And so then they make different rates. And I think the highest rate is $56 an hour. So, I mean, the rates in the industry are really good. The thing, you always have to watch out for is that the rates are good, but you don't work all year. So, it's like you could have a job for 6 months and then you don't have a job for 6 months. So there's no job security in the industry. So it's really you going out, finding your work. So, you can work all year and you make a great salary, or you're like, you work, 6 months of the year and you're kind of like an average salary. It's become, and then you have to just be smart in saving your money and managing. If, plan for like the pandemic, plan for a year where you're not working,
Yeah.
And
have you been working at all this during the pandemic, or do you see?
No, I didn't work at all. I actually just started a film 4 weeks ago. So I've been unemployed since last March.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's affected a lot of people. Someone did ask about how much a PA makes. Is that on a scale?
That's just the standard rate. It's 700 a week. 700?
Mm-hmm. And they have to be on set just as long, right? Those are 12-hour days.
No, I mean, I try to respect the PA. I mean, they get kind of abused, and they do all of the, they just do all the little stuff that keeps us all running. But I really try to have them go home at a normal hour, because, right. There's no reason to be there till 9 o'clock. Right. Some people volunteer and want to hang out and help me make a model, and I'm like, hey, that's great. I love the company, but I wouldn't, So I'd like to keep PAs at a 10-hour day at worst case scenario.
Well, I know we're running short on time. We've got another meeting in 1 minute. So, well, thank you. That was very interesting. And if anybody has any questions, you can send an email to me, or I can reach out to you, or perhaps maybe share your email. I don't know if you're open to that, but.
Oh, I'm happy to answer emails, or,
okay.
Happy to, if you want to chat about the industry further, I'm happy to do that.
Yes. And I'm going to hit you up about internships once things get back to me.
Yes.
Or even job shadow or something. Yeah.
Well, job shadows I can do. I don't usually have internships, but I did an Academy of Motion Picture intern who just graduated. And so I had 4 meetings with her so she could come hang in the art department and do that sort of thing. So happy to have shadowers.
All right. Well, yeah, again, anybody on here, reach out to me. I'll share your email. Send an email to Adrienne Madrid at CCUSD. Thank you so much, Desma. This is recorded. It will be posted on our website under College and Career, and also the Canvas counseling page. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you, Desma.
Thank you.